The Galactic Council chamber was enormous, stretching as far as the eye could see. Inside, creatures from hundreds of different worlds gathered together. Some looked like giant insects. Others were covered in scales or fur. A few didn't even have solid bodies at all. Ambassador Thalas sat at his station, his 6 legs folded beneath him. He was reviewing a new message that had arrived from a distant part of the galaxy. His sensory stalks twitched with interest as he read. A new species wanted to join the council. They called themselves humans and they came from a small blue planet called Earth. Thalas had been a council diplomat for over 40 years. In all that time he had only seen 3 new species attempt to join. 2 had failed. The third barely survived the process. Another primitive species, grumbled Counselor Dreth from across the chamber. Her scales gleamed under the artificial lights. They always promise peace and cooperation. They always disappoint us. Perhaps we should at least listen to their message, Thalas suggested. The massive viewing screen activated. A human woman appeared before them. She had smooth skin, dark hair, and eyes that faced forward like a predator. But her expression was calm and friendly. Greetings from humanity, the woman said. My name is Margaret Hayes. We have recently achieved faster-than-light travel and have discovered that we are not alone in the universe. We come in peace and friendship. We wish to learn from you, to trade with you, and to build a future together among the stars. The message continued for several minutes. The humans showed images of Earth, their cities, their art, and their culture. Everything seemed pleasant enough. But Thalas noticed something in the background files. The humans had included their complete history as a gesture of transparency. And that history was troubling. Wars. Thousands of them. Humans had fought each other constantly for their entire recorded history. They had developed increasingly terrible weapons. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times with nuclear weapons, biological warfare, and environmental damage. See, Dreth hissed. Warmongers pretending to be peaceful. We should reject them immediately. Other counselors murmured in agreement. But Thalas found himself oddly fascinated. Yes, humans had fought wars. But they had also created beautiful art, magnificent music, and impressive science. They had overcome their differences to unite their entire planet under one government. That was rare. Very rare. I propose we grant them probationary status, Thalas said. Give them a colony world. Let them prove themselves over 3 years. If they succeed, we grant them full membership. If they fail, we part ways peacefully. The council debated for 3 full days. Finally, they agreed to Thalas's proposal. The humans would get their chance. 6 months later, Margaret Hayes arrived at the council station aboard a human ship called the Olive Branch. Thalas greeted her at the docking bay, curious to meet a human in person. She was smaller than he expected, barely reaching the height of his thorax. But she carried herself with quiet confidence. When she saw him, she smiled and extended her hand. Thalas had studied human customs. He reached out with one of his forward limbs and grasped her hand gently. Her skin was warm and soft. Thank you for this opportunity, Ambassador Thalas, Margaret said. We won't disappoint you. Over the next 3 months, Margaret and her team worked tirelessly. They attended every meeting, answered every question, and endured skepticism from dozens of species who didn't trust them. The hardest moment came during a public forum. Counselor Dreth stood before the entire assembly and accused humans of being dangerous predators hiding behind false smiles. Your history shows constant violence, Dreth declared. You have weapons capable of destroying entire planets. You have fought wars that killed millions of your own kind. Why should we believe you want peace? The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to Margaret. She didn't look away. She didn't make excuses. Instead, she stepped forward and spoke clearly. Everything you said is true, Counselor Dreth. We have fought terrible wars. We have made horrible mistakes. We have hurt each other and nearly destroyed our own world. Margaret paused. But we learned. We grew. We chose to change. We know what war costs because we've paid that price over and over again. That's exactly why we value peace so deeply now. Not because we're weak or naive, but because we understand what happens when peace fails. Dreth narrowed her eyes. You still have weapons. You still have armies. Yes, we do, Margaret admitted. We can defend ourselves if necessary. But defense and aggression are not the same thing. We come in peace because we choose to, not because we have no other option. Thalas watched the other counselors carefully. Some seemed thoughtful. Others remained suspicious. But no one could deny that Margaret's words carried weight. After 3 months of evaluation, the council finally voted. Humanity was granted a colony world called New Hope. They had 3 years to prove they deserved full membership. As Margaret prepared to leave the station, the Loss approached her privately. "I must be honest with you, Ambassador Hayes," he said quietly. "Your species concerns me. You are more dangerous than you appear. I cannot decide if your pursuit of peace makes you wise or simply naive." Margaret smiled. "Maybe we're both, Ambassador. Maybe that's what makes us human." 3 years passed quickly on New Hope. The colony world had transformed in ways that surprised everyone watching. When humans first arrived, the planet was marginal at best. The soil was poor, water was scarce, and the climate was unpredictable. But humans were stubborn. They brought engineers who designed irrigation systems that captured every drop of rainfall. They brought farmers who enriched the soil with techniques perfected over thousands of years on Earth. They brought scientists who studied the local ecosystem and found ways to work with it instead of against it. Within 18 months, New Hope was producing surplus food. Within 2 years, human settlements dotted 3 continents. Within 3 years, the colony was thriving beyond anyone's expectations. Captain Robert Blake stood on the bridge of his ship, the Defender, watching the planet below. At 36 years old, he commanded one of 5 human vessels assigned to protect New Hope and the surrounding trade routes. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," said Lieutenant Emma Grant from the communications station. "It's one of our cargo ships, the Prosperity. They're under attack." Robert moved quickly. "Battle stations. Get me a location and enemy count." The information came through within seconds. 3 Vrek raider ships had ambushed the Prosperity near the asteroid belt. The Vrek were known throughout this sector as pirates and scavengers. They attacked weak targets and took whatever they wanted. The Defender arrived within minutes, weapons hot and shields up. The Vrek ships immediately broke off their attack and turned to face this new threat. Robert opened a communication channel. "Vrek vessels, this is Captain Robert Blake of the human ship Defender. Stand down and withdraw. We don't want to fight you." The response came in broken but understandable Galactic Standard language. "Human ship, leave now. This is our prize. Go away or die." Robert sighed. He had hoped to avoid this. "Lieutenant Grant, disable their weapons and engines. Precision strikes only. No lethal force." His crew worked with practiced efficiency. The Defender's weapons were not the most powerful in the galaxy, but they were accurate. Within 90 seconds, all 3 Vrek ships were drifting helplessly in space, their systems offline but their hulls intact. "Now what, Captain?" asked Grant. "Should we call for Council security to arrest them?" Robert shook his head. "No. Scan their ships. Check their life support and medical status." The scans revealed what Robert suspected. The Vrek crews were malnourished. Their ships were old and poorly maintained. These weren't professional pirates. They were desperate scavengers trying to survive. "Open a channel to the lead Vrek ship," Robert ordered. A Vrek face appeared on screen. The creature looked vaguely reptilian with 4 eyes and sharp teeth. It snarled at Robert with hatred. "You have defeated us, human. Kill us quickly." "I'm not going to kill you," Robert said calmly. "I'm going to help you." The Vrek's expression changed to confusion. All 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "What?" Over the next 2 hours, Robert's crew did something that no one in the sector had ever seen before. They repaired the Vrek ship's critical systems. They transferred food, water, and medical supplies. They even provided star charts showing legitimate salvage opportunities in unclaimed space. The Vrek captain was brought aboard the Defender. He sat across from Robert in the conference room, still unable to understand what was happening. "Why do this?" the Vrek asked. "We attacked your ship. We would have killed your people and stolen your cargo." Robert poured 2 cups of coffee and slid one across the table. The Vrek sniffed it suspiciously but didn't drink. "Because you were desperate," Robert explained. "Your crews are starving. Your ships are falling apart. You didn't attack us because you're evil. You attacked because you saw no other choice." "We are enemies," the Vrek insisted. "Only if we choose to be," Robert replied. "We came to this part of space in peace. That means we try to help everyone, even people who attack us first. Maybe especially those people." The Vrek captain stared at Robert for a long moment. Then slowly he picked up the coffee cup and took a small sip. His expression suggested he found it strange but not unpleasant. "Your species is very strange, Captain Blake." "So we've been told," Robert said with a smile. News of the incident spread quickly through the sector. Other species heard the story and didn't know what to make of it. Some admired humanity's compassion. Others thought it was naive and foolish. Ambassador The Lost called Margaret Hayes to discuss the situation. Your people continue to surprise me, the Lost said. Captain Blake could have destroyed those raiders easily. Instead he fed them. The council is divided on whether this shows wisdom or weakness. Margaret looked at her old friend through the video link. It shows who we are at the Lost. We meant what we said. We come in peace. But what happens when you face an enemy that won't be swayed by kindness? The Lost asked. What happens when compassion isn't enough? Margaret's expression grew serious. Then we'll do what's necessary. We come in peace, Ambassador. But we're not defenseless. We know the difference between helping the desperate and enabling the evil. The Lost felt a chill run through his body. There was something in Margaret's tone that reminded him of humanity's violent history. These humans were kind and generous, yes. But underneath that kindness was something harder and more dangerous. The Galactic Council prepared to vote on humanity's full membership. But before they could, everything changed. The Krothak Empire had been watching humanity for months with growing contempt. They were a militaristic civilization that had conquered 17 star systems through sheer force. Their philosophy was simple. Strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. General Vorn commanded the Krothak fleet from his massive warship, the Conqueror. He was a veteran of 30 campaigns and had never lost a battle. When he reviewed the intelligence reports about humans, he laughed. These soft creatures speak of peace and friendship, he told his officers. They repair the ships of pirates who attack them. They offer gifts instead of demanding tribute. They are weak, and the weak do not deserve to exist. Vorn sent an official message to the human government. The demand was simple. Surrender New Hope and 3 other human colonies to the Krothak Empire within 10 days, or face total destruction. Ambassador Margaret Hayes received the message while attending a council meeting. She immediately requested a private communication with General Vorn. The Krothak general's face appeared on her screen. He was massive, covered in thick armor-like skin, with cold eyes that showed no mercy. General Vorn, surely we can negotiate, Margaret said calmly. We have no quarrel with the Krothak Empire. We can discuss territorial boundaries, establish trade agreements, perhaps find a compromise that satisfies both our peoples. Vorn's laugh was like grinding metal. Negotiate? You think I want to talk? I want your worlds human. I will take them. Your only choice is whether your colonists die quickly or slowly. Please, Margaret tried again. Violence benefits no one. Let us find a peaceful solution. Vorn ended the communication without another word. 3 days later, the Krothak fleet arrived at New Hope. 50 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They were massive vessels, each one bristling with weapons designed for planetary bombardment. Captain Robert Blake was ready. His 5 human ships were positioned throughout the system, along with 12 civilian vessels that had been hastily armed. Against 50 Krothak warships, the odds seemed impossible. General Vorn broadcast a final message. Humans of New Hope, you have 1 hour to evacuate your planet before we begin bombardment. After that, anyone remaining will die. This is your only warning. Robert opened a channel to all human vessels. All ships, this is Captain Blake. Remember your training. Stay calm, stay coordinated, and trust each other. They came here expecting an easy victory. Let's prove them wrong. The hour passed. The Krothak fleet advanced. Then the battle began. Human ships moved like nothing the Krothak had ever seen. They didn't charge forward in a straight line like honorable warriors. Instead, they used the asteroid field for cover, striking from unexpected angles and then disappearing before the Krothak could return fire effectively. The defender emerged from behind a large asteroid, fired a precise volley that disabled a Krothak ship's engines, then vanished back into cover. 2 other human ships attacked from opposite directions simultaneously, confusing the enemy targeting systems. Before each strike, the humans broadcast the same message: we came in peace. General Vorn was furious. They fight like cowards. All ships, break formation and hunt them down individually. That was exactly what Robert wanted. When the Krothak fleet broke apart, human ships used coordinated strikes to isolate and disable enemy vessels one at a time. They didn't try to destroy the Krothak ships completely. Instead, they targeted weapons and propulsion systems, leaving the crews alive but helpless. The battle lasted 18 hours. It was brutal and exhausting. 3 human ships were badly damaged. Hundreds of human crew members were injured and 27 died defending their home. But the Krothak lost 30 ships disabled and another 8 completely destroyed. The survivors retreated in chaos, unable to understand how such a small force had defeated them. General Vorn's face was twisted with rage as he fled. This isn't over, humans. The full might of the Krothak Empire will crush you. News of the battle reached the Galactic Council within hours. Ambassador Thalos immediately accessed humanity's military history files, something he had been avoiding because it made him uncomfortable. What he found shocked him. Humans had fought wars continuously for 10,000 years. Their tactical knowledge was more advanced than species 3 times their age. They had developed strategies for every type of combat imaginable. They understood asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, guerrilla tactics, and coordinated fleet actions at a level that was genuinely terrifying. Thalos called Margaret immediately. "You didn't tell us. You didn't tell anyone how dangerous you really are." Margaret looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes. "Would you have given us a chance if we had led with that information? We wanted to be judged by our actions, not our past." "But now everyone knows," Thalos said quietly. "The galaxy knows humans are exceptional warriors." "We know we're better than any species you've ever met," Margaret said firmly. "That's exactly why we choose peace, Thalos. We've seen what war does. We've lived it for millennia. We don't want that for ourselves or anyone else." Before Thalos could respond, another message came through. General Vorn had returned to Krothak space and convinced his government to launch a full invasion. 1,000 warships were being prepared. The entire Krothak armada would descend on human space within a month. The galaxy would see the true cost of forcing humanity to abandon peace. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaotic. Representatives from hundreds of species shouted at each other, their voices creating a cacophony of fear and anger. The Krothak Empire had declared total war on humanity, and everyone knew what that meant. Councillor Dreth stood at her platform, her scales gleaming under the harsh lights. "The choice is simple. We expel humanity from the Council immediately and apologize to the Krothak Empire. If we do this now, perhaps they will spare the rest of us." "You would abandon our allies?" Thalos demanded, his sensory stalks quivering with emotion. "We invited them here. We gave them probationary status. Now you want to throw them away to save yourselves?" "I want to save 800 species from destruction," Dress shouted back. "The Krothak have 1,000 warships. Humanity has barely 20 ships. This isn't a war. It's suicide. And I won't let them drag us down with them." The vote was held within hours. The result was overwhelming. 743 species voted to expel humanity. Only 12 voted to support them. 92 abstained. Ambassador Margaret Hayes watched the vote on a screen from her quarters. She had expected this outcome, but it still hurt. She had worked so hard to build friendships across the galaxy. Now, in their moment of fear, those friendships crumbled. Thalos came to see her before she left the council station. The old diplomat looked tired and sad. "I'm sorry, Margaret. I tried to convince them, but fear is a powerful force." Margaret managed a small smile. "Don't apologize, Thalos. You stood with us when it mattered. That means more than you know. The others did what they thought was necessary to protect their people. I can't blame them for that." "What will you do now?" Thalos asked. "We'll fight," Margaret said simply. "We'll defend our worlds and our people. And we'll keep trying to find a peaceful solution, even though I know General Vorn won't listen." "Against 1,000 ships?" "Yes, against 1,000 ships. Because that's who we are." Margaret returned to human space and began preparations. Every available ship was armed and crewed. Civilians were evacuated from vulnerable colonies. Defensive positions were established around critical worlds. Captain Robert Blake gathered his officers aboard the Defender. His crew had grown to respect their young captain, and they listened carefully as he outlined their strategy. "We can't win a direct battle," Robert explained. "They outnumber us 50 to 1. But we don't need to win a direct battle. We need to make this war so costly, so frustrating, and so endless that they give up." "Guerrilla warfare," said Lieutenant Emma Grant. "Exactly. We hit them where they're weak. We avoid them where they're strong. We never give them a fair fight. We make them chase us across a dozen systems. We make every inch of space they take cost them dearly." The Krothak Armada arrived 4 weeks later. General Vorn led his fleet with absolute confidence. He had faced rebellions before and he had crushed them all. These humans would be no different. But from the first moment, everything went wrong. The Krothak fleet entered the outer human system expecting to find the human ships waiting in defensive positions around the colonies. Instead they found empty space. The colonies had been evacuated. The human ships were nowhere to be seen. "Find them," Vorn roared. "They must be hiding somewhere nearby." His fleet spread out to search. That was when the attacks began. A group of 5 human ships appeared from behind a moon, launched a devastating strike against a Krothak supply convoy, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. The supplies that the Krothak needed to sustain their campaign were destroyed. 6 hours later, another attack hit a different part of the fleet. Then another. Then another. The human ships never stayed to fight a prolonged battle. They struck hard and fast, then vanished into asteroid fields, nebulas, or behind planets where the larger Krothak vessels couldn't follow easily. Before every attack, the humans broadcast the same message: they came in peace. You brought war. General Vorn tried everything. He split his fleet into smaller groups to cover more space, but the humans picked off the smaller groups one by one. He kept his fleet together for mutual protection, but then the humans simply avoided him and attacked his supply lines. He tried to predict where they would strike next, but the humans seemed to know his every move before he made it. After 3 months of fighting, the Krothak had lost over 200 ships. They hadn't destroyed a single human colony or captured any significant territory. The invasion was becoming a disaster. That was when Captain Robert Blake executed his most daring plan yet. A team of human commandos boarded and captured General Vorn's command ship while it was being resupplied at a forward base. They seized the ship's communication logs intact. Robert broadcast the files across every frequency in the galaxy. The Krothak leadership's private communications were exposed for everyone to hear. And what they revealed changed everything. General Vorn and the Krothak High Command had been planning all along to conquer the Galactic Council after defeating humanity. Every species in the galaxy had been marked for subjugation. The attack on humanity was just the beginning of a much larger campaign of conquest. The galaxy realized that humanity hadn't been the target. They had been the first line of defense for everyone else. Within days, ships from dozens of species began arriving in human space. They came to fight alongside the humans they had abandoned. Dalas was among the first to arrive, commanding a small fleet from his homeworld. "We were wrong to leave you alone," Dalas told Margaret. "We see that now. If you'll have us, we stand with humanity." Margaret's eyes were wet with tears, but she smiled. "Welcome, old friend. Let's finish this together." The combined fleet gathered in the space around New Hope. What had started as 20 human ships had grown into a force of 300 vessels from 40 different species. Ships of all shapes and sizes floated together in formations that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Captain Robert Blake stood on the bridge of the Defender, coordinating with commanders from a dozen different species. Lieutenant Emma Grant worked beside him, translating battle plans into formats that every species could understand. "The Krothak main fleet is regrouping near their supply depot in the 7th sector," reported a VRNN commander through the communication system. "General Vorn is consolidating his remaining 800 ships for one final assault." Robert studied the tactical display. "Then we end this now. All fleet commanders prepare for coordinated assault. We've taught you our strategies over the past month. Now it's time to use them." The battle plan was complex but elegant. Human tactics combined with the unique strengths of each species created something more powerful than any single fleet could achieve alone. The insectoid VRYNN provided reconnaissance that could track enemy movements across vast distances. The aquatic nereids contributed jamming technology that confused Krothak sensors. The crystalline lidhans offered shield technology that protected smaller ships from heavy bombardment. And humans provided the strategic thinking that tied it all together. The combined fleet struck the Krothak position from 7 different vectors simultaneously. General Vorn tried to respond, but his forces were exhausted from months of frustrating combat. His officers were demoralized. His supply lines were stretched thin. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the Krothak fleet had been shattered. General Vorn's flagship was disabled and boarded. The general himself was taken into custody by human marines. Robert went to see him in the detention cell. Vorn sat on a bench, his armor-like skin scarred from battle, his eyes filled with hatred. "You should kill me now, human," Vorn growled. "That's what a true warrior would do." Robert shook his head. "We're not going to kill you, General. You're going to stand trial for your crimes. And then you're going to watch as we do something you never thought possible." "What's that?" "We're going to help your people." Vorn laughed bitterly. "You're insane. My people will never accept help from those they tried to conquer." "Maybe not today," Robert admitted. "But eventually they will. Because we're patient. And because we meant what we said from the beginning. We come in peace." The aftermath of the war was complex and difficult. The Krothak Empire had collapsed. 17 conquered worlds were suddenly free but also unstable. Refugee ships flooded into neighboring systems. Infrastructure was damaged. Economies were in ruins. Ambassador Margaret Hayes proposed a plan to the Galactic Council that shocked many members. Instead of punishing the Krothak, humanity wanted to help them rebuild. Former Krothak soldiers and civilians would be offered education, job training, and citizenship in a new coalition government. "You're being too generous," Councillor Dreth said, though her tone was no longer hostile. "They tried to destroy you. And if we destroy them in return, what does that accomplish?" Margaret asked. "We end up with more suffering, more hatred, and eventually another war. We have a chance to break that cycle. We should take it." The proposal passed with overwhelming support. The galaxy had learned something from watching humanity. Strength wasn't just about military power. It was also about having the courage to show mercy when you had the power to take revenge. Captain Robert Blake retired from military service and took a position training the new integrated defense forces. He taught officers from hundreds of species the tactics and strategies that humans had developed over millennia. But more importantly, he taught them when to fight and when to seek peaceful solutions. One day, a young Krothak officer approached him after a training session. The officer's name was Kenneth, and he had fought against human forces during the war. "Captain Blake, I must ask you something," Kent said hesitantly. "During the war, my ship was disabled by your forces. You could have destroyed us easily. Instead, you provided medical aid and escorted us to a safe location. Why?" Robert smiled. "Because the war was against your government, not against you personally. You were a soldier following orders. Once you were no longer a threat, you became someone who needed help. It's that simple." "My people were taught that mercy is weakness," Kent said quietly. "But I'm learning that perhaps we were wrong about many things." 5 years after the war ended, the Galactic Council had transformed completely. New Hope had become the diplomatic center of the galaxy, a place where species from all backgrounds lived and worked together. The human motto, "We come in peace," had been adopted by the Council itself. Ambassador Thalos retired and chose to spend his remaining years on New Hope. He and Margaret often sat together in a garden overlooking the human colony's capital city, watching ships from hundreds of worlds come and go. "You know, when I first met your species, I thought you were either foolishly naive or dangerously deceptive," Thalos admitted one afternoon. "I was wrong on both counts." Margaret laughed. "So what are we then?" "Stubborn," Thalos said with affection. "Impossibly, wonderfully stubborn. You refuse to let the universe make you cruel, even though you've experienced enough cruelty to justify it. That's not naivety. It's strength of a kind I've never seen before." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the peaceful afternoon. Then Margaret's communication device chimed. She read the message and smiled. "What is it?" Thalos asked. "A new species just made first contact with the Council. They're asking for guidance on how to approach galactic society. The Council wants me to greet them officially." "And what will you tell them?" Margaret stood and straightened her uniform. "The same thing I told you the first day we met. We come in peace. And then I'll show them what those words really mean." Thalos watched her go, feeling grateful that his long life had allowed him to witness something truly remarkable. The galaxy had been forever changed by a species that knew war intimately but chose peace deliberately. And that choice had made all the difference. Somewhere above them, a new ship entered orbit. Another species taking their first steps into a larger community. Another opportunity to prove that cooperation was stronger than conquest. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities and hope. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that humanity had taught the galaxy. Peace isn't the absence of strength. Peace is what you build when you're strong enough to choose it.